Whatever gap brought her closer to the exit. Her legs ached, and she was moving too fast for the tight corners. She had to yank herself around the edges of the shelves, dislodging gems and components. A trail of fallen artifice pieces littered the floor behind her. She could hear him following, quick footsteps against the stone floor. He was chanting in the lingua again, readying a spell to burn her alive. From somewhere deep in the workshop behind came a distant howling, with an icy crackle behind it that sent a chill through her blood. What in the Astra was that? She didn't want to find out. Her lungs burned and her breath came in short, terrified gasps, but she was nearly at the door, just around the next corner, and then she put her foot down wrong. Her ankle turned, and she stumbled sidelong against a shelf. She put her hand out to catch herself and knocked over a collection of iron rods and copper plates. There they were. No, no, no. She had to keep moving, couldn't afford this. Panicked, she risked a look over her shoulder. He rounded the corner behind her, still chanting, lifted his hand. Alea screamed as silver flame roared over her skin and dissolved her sight. Chapter 1. Tane Carver knew something was wrong the moment the clock began to chime. It was the students. There weren't enough of them. Normally, the clock atop Thalen's hall tolling the hour would have sent hundreds of young humans and elves and gnomes and more scurrying to their classes. But today, the campus was nearly empty. A few dozen students scattered about, and that was all. The university guard were out in force, though, patrolling the cobbled paths in their silver-on-blue uniforms. 2 stood at the entrance to every building, new and old, from the functional brick of the artifice workshops to the ancient stonework of the cathedral-like invocation hall. At every door, guards were stopping what few students approached, making them display laurel wreath badges to identify themselves. Tane hadn't been back since he'd been expelled 2 years prior, but unless the University of Thalas had become a prison camp since then, he had to classify that as unusual. He felt the familiar high-altitude pressure in his ears that always preceded ascending, and then a voice spoke in his head. "Mr. Carver, I'm reading you on campus. Don't dawdle. I'm waiting." Liana Graymond, Dean of Divination. Tane had come at her request, though he'd considered refusing. He didn't much want to hear a lecture on how badly he'd embarrassed the university. Ultimately, though, he'd been curious enough to chance it. After 2 years, she wouldn't have contacted him without reason. "I know you're eager to see me, but try to contain yourself, Dean Graymond," Tane answered without speaking, through her spell, not his own. She'd left the link open, an astral channel that he had no way to replicate. "You'll make me blush." A slight pop in his ears as the pressure abated, and Graymond's presence was gone. He'd been her favorite student once, but even then she'd never had much patience for his sense of humor. Tane studied what few students he saw as he walked, without hurrying, toward the divination hall. They mirrored the population of the Audland Protectorate at large, half of them human like him, and half a diverse selection of the magical races, a dwarf here, an elf there, a doll-sized sprite fluttering down the path beside a 9-foot-tall ogren. All wore the silver-on-blue laurel wreath badge of the university displayed proudly at the breast of their topcoats, and they all looked so young, though he was only a few years older now than they were. Most kept their heads down and walked quickly, avoiding eye contact, but a small group had gathered on the open grass at the campus center, whispering in hushed tones. Tane didn't need divination to sense their unease. As he watched, a dwarven man in university guard uniform approached the little congregation and hurried them on their way with a few words. They moved on without argument. What is going on? Tane regretted not asking Dean Graymond while he'd had the chance, but she wouldn't have answered in any case, not until he was sitting in front of her. He was still watching the little group disperse when someone bumped into him.
"I'm sorry,"
a squeaky voice from somewhere near his waist.
"I wasn't watching." "Tane?"
Tane looked down to see a dark-skinned